The mother of 5-year-old Michael Komape, who died after falling into a pit toilet at the Mahlodumela Primary School, says she is disappointed with the teacher tasked with looking after him. Michael drowned in the toilet on Monday afternoon after going to relieve himself during break time.
Na ba mfonitse sekolong ka 12:30 ba mpotsa gore Michael a gona mo sekolong ke founela ke principal ke fitla pula be sarasara karna Michael o kae ba re Michael salba felletša go mmona ka 10 karna le molebeletse go tlhefa ka mokana ba re molebeletse go tlhefa ka moka a gona Michael a gona ka mo sekolong ke re ke ya di toilet ke molebelela ka mokgwa le gore toilet tša gona be di šiša ka gona a se ke kgone go bona botse gore na go diegangana mole ngwana no o ba ena le yena toilet a re Michael o wetse ka mo toilet ya school ke ge re thoma go goma jalo re ya sekolong re fitla sekolong ba šalla morago ke re ke thoma go tsamaya le ngwanula ke ga a fitla a šupa ka mogare ga toilet a re Michael pelo ka ile a ba botlhoko kudu go bona letsogo la ngwana ka gara toilet ke le ka fenta
Well, education infrastructure just nationally has always been a problem, and the department has been failing for a number of years. So something like the Michael Komape case was something that was always an accident waiting to happen. I guess what it did was just bring to the fore just how bad the situation is.
Saleno wa raboloka Michael education a senke ba romele batho gore ba tle ka molapeng le batho ba no re khomotsa o no re bontsha gore ntlo ba e dirileng ke phosho ge o diretse motho phosho o tshwanetse o boele o yena o gopele tshwarelo o re bontsha gore ke dirile phosho mara education ka ge ile gore e bone gore ka ngwanola wa ka a se di phosho a senke itele ka moga o no to re gopela tshwarelo gore banna re le phoshedi.
South Africa today has over 8,000 schools with pit latrines, one of a series of major infrastructure issues in schools. In the 4 years since the death of Michael Komape, there have been multiple court cases, a series of government promises, and rising unrest among the populations affected by education infrastructure. Education infrastructure remains a massive problem in South Africa, one that has its roots in the Bantu Education Act of 1953, in which the apartheid government took control of black education.
The infrastructural challenges in rural areas are mapped entirely on the legacy of the Bantustans, which were self-governing territories defining apartheid, and pockets of poverty, rural and African poverty.
In assuming that one race is superior to another, there was also this intrinsic link that any kind of access to services and resources in the country also had to be sort of delineated across those lines.
In your historically advantaged, historically white schools, you'd have schools with sprawling lawns and soccer fields and swimming pools and cricket fields on the one end of the spectrum. On the other end of the spectrum, which are the large majority of schools, you'd get your rural schools with broken, very dysfunctional infrastructure, without libraries, laboratories, and the very basics.
The Bantu Education Act stratified educational opportunities in both the classroom learning and the physical infrastructure of the schools. Many rural communities were forced to build their own schools with the limited material they had available. A large majority of these poorly constructed buildings remain in use today. The discrepancy in education has contributed to the discrepancy in opportunities nationwide.
You can see very clearly that better outcomes are where schools are better resourced and have better infrastructure, and terrible outcomes are where schools have terrible infrastructure and no resources. And so we know that infrastructure is very closely linked to learner performance. So for them, it continues to trap them in a cycle of poverty, cycle of illiteracy, and it means that their social conditions will never change, and their right to enjoyment of basically their lives is severely hampered by infrastructure.
When Nelson Mandela was elected president of the new democratic South Africa in 1994, it was clear that education could become an effective tool to bridge inequality gaps left by apartheid. In 1996, the South African Constitution was introduced. Section 29(1)(a) guaranteed basic education for all.
The right to basic education in the South African Constitution is a socioeconomic right that's framed differently to other socioeconomic rights in our Constitution.
Other rights are progressively realizable, i.e. that government needs to have a plan every year to get more and more people having access to the right. Whereas education is immediately realizable, meaning that they have to do everything possible right now to make it happen.
Through the jurisprudence that's developed, we now understand correctly that that doesn't just mean everyone must be in a school. It means everyone must be in a safe school and a school that has a proper teaching and learning environment.
It was never a mistake for the right to be entrenched so deeply and so unequivocally, and therefore the standard at which we hold government has to be much higher than we do with other rights.
Yet 22 years after the Constitution was ratified, the nationwide right to basic education remains an unfulfilled promise.
Whereas change has taken place somewhere in a place where they have a brand new school, state-of-the-art facilities, and happiness has come. Yet in some other part of the country, people are still waiting and they're becoming impatient.
People 23 years ago were learning in dilapidated structures, and 23 years now, people are still learning in the same kind of environments. Then we question also, how is that possible? I think with education, what has happened is that the need or the demand has been much more overwhelming than what it was perceived to be.
From our perspective, we've always seen it as there's a huge capacity problem, i.e. we have some willingness to change, but not enough capacity to do it and to do it right. And that's because there was a lot of things that weren't in place, including, how do you then properly, one, identify all of the schools, then identify the needs of the various schools, then budget for those needs, and then be able to come up with an implementation plan.
I'm hopeful in that new schools have been built in many places where there was nothing before. Is something being done? Yes, something is being done on a daily basis. Some commitment is being shown, but for as long as new people are coming to the country pushing demand, the difference that we've made won't look like much because the challenges remain.
But I am certain from the work that I've done that we are not building sufficient capacity and agency at school level to do the elementary maintenance that would mean that schools do not continue to deteriorate as badly as they are.
The delay in fixing infrastructure problems has left some schools feeling completely abandoned.
We keep on worrying. If a learner can go to the bathroom, you just keep on worrying of whether you'll come back or not. Because the condition of the toilet, it's a point number one. These are toilets that we are talking about. So it's just a hole. A learner can fall inside the hole.
You see the cracks here on the ground? These are our classes. They look like this. Just look at the floor. That's the condition where we live in.
So I'm not very happy about the conditions at our school. As you can see, inside the classes, the walls of the buildings of our school has cracked. There are potholes on the floor, so this poses a real danger to our health. The kitchen there, under which our food has been cooked, is not very good. It does not have a proper roof, so you can see while they are busy cooking, dust can just enter.
Here. One wall might collapse, especially the one on the western side. They didn't even come here to check whether there is a pet latrine or not. No, if funds were allocated to these schools, we haven't seen one.
If an educator who is teaching 38 learners has to go outside with all those 38 learners, monitor all those learners and come back to class, the time that is used to go to the latrine is taking the time that was supposed to be used in the classroom to teach the learners.
I don't know, Ore, when we talk about human rights, these learners who are attending here, are they treated like the normal human beings who are supposed to have the decent life in South Africa now?
Yeah, and so this one's 2008. 2008 June.
Since we visited the school to survey the building, we took photos and size of each classroom. Purpose of surveying is the Department of Public Works updates the asset register.
Yeah, here's another one. This one's for 2011. Here's another one, 2012.
Collected updated information for the provision of mobile classrooms. 13 August 2015, school visit on infrastructure issues. The two buildings, one used as classrooms, one used as storage, are unsafe and pose serious danger to learners and staff. I recommend that the two buildings be closed and locked. Learners are still using pit toilets. All these challenges will be forwarded to head office for further assistance.
That was the 13th of August 2015.
I believe that if you can just improve this school, learners can get encouraged so that they cannot just get bad results while attending in a better school.
It sends a message that, one, they've been forgotten. Two, that the education system doesn't really care about them. More than anything else, I think it keeps you in a cycle of poverty. If you look at the numbers, really, it just says that I don't think enough is being done, because if you've got about 5,900 schools in Limpopo and 5,380 of them don't have libraries, you know, and then you've got about 2,500 schools that still have pit toilets. That, for me, that just says not enough is being done.
Every year we're promised something, but
For more than 5 years, learners and activists have been fighting to improve infrastructure conditions in schools. Now their work is gaining traction. Since July 2018, there have been 3 major court rulings and a new presidential initiative, all of which address education infrastructure. The government's Accelerated School Infrastructure Delivery Initiative has succeeded in building 111 new schools since 2011. However, it has failed to meet its yearly targets. The first victory in the fight to improve infrastructure occurred in 2013, when a nationwide campaign of protests, marches, and letters to Parliament resulted in the adoption of the norms and standards for education infrastructure.
It's a regulation that says what makes a school, what fundamental infrastructure does every school have to have. And it also says that schools that don't meet those criteria and must be fixed within certain time frames.
However, from its inception, there were problems.
Only about 2 months after the regulations were adopted at the end of 2013, Michael Komape had died.
And hence, Matlodumela Primary School, where Michael died, wasn't part of the auditing process. So even where there is goodwill to do the work, they just don't have the proper systems in place in order to do it effectively and properly.
The norms and standards set a 3-year deadline for the improvement of school conditions.
But because of these sort of loopholes that were built into the regulations, we were always very concerned about whether those deadlines would be treated as such and met. There was a provision in Regulation 45A that said that the implementation of the norms and standards was subject to the cooperation and resources of other government entities and agencies responsible for infrastructure generally.
So in essence, we saw that as a legal loophole from meeting any of the other requirements in the regulations. So where it says, for example, that you have to get rid of pit toilets within 3 years, it means you have to get rid of pit toilets within 3 years unless other government departments don't cooperate or unless there aren't available resources. So in essence, that waters down the obligation.
By the November 2016 deadline, the standards were not met, and Equal Education took the Department of Basic Education back to court.
Well, the court battle regarding norms and standards was really about the time frames for the delivery of particular services in schools. People feel it takes too long, and that some schools will just continue and continue without anyone being held to account.
I think the state has sort of confused difficult realities with what the duty should be. So one of the things they said in the Bisho High Court during the hearing was the reality is it's hard to fix schools. The reality is different organs of state have to come to the party. And that absolutely is the reality. But you can't take that reality and then say, and then water down the duty.
When the court matter went to court, when we were taken to court, we're already in the process of reviewing them to strengthen them for better governance in our schools, because we've realized that indeed some provinces are looking at the loopholes that are in there. So to a certain extent, we agree with Equal Education and Section 27.
So what litigation does really is it catalyzes or pushes for some kind of response, some kind of commitment from government.
In March, while the case was still in its hearings phase, tragedy struck again.
And the tragic death of a 5-year-old child using a pit toilet at her Mbizana school in the Eastern Cape has evoked anger as the country marks Human Rights Month. Lumka Mkhatshwa was buried at her home in Nyaka village. This latest death comes 3 years after a similar incident in Limpopo.
Activists first heard about Lumka's death on the steps of the courthouse.
And incidentally, the Komape family also happened to be in attendance there. So just in that whole moment, it was such a surreal moment where it just really collided all the various strands of the failings of the Department of Basic Education, but also the very real impact on families.
The tragedy is that we have to really drag the state through this court process when the state's focus and resources should have been on saying, yes, we do need a constitutionally sound framework and we need to focus on fixing schools because our learners are in a dangerous position.
The Komapes had thought, they're the only family that would ever have to suffer something like this. They would have thought, something would have done, but nothing was done. And as a result of that, 4 years later, another little girl fell into a toilet in Eastern Cape. So I think, that all of that just really was just another illustrative point of government's lack of commitment to ensuring that children are not being sent to school to die. And it also brought to the fore how low is too low. One death, one would have thought, is as low as you can go. And now we seem to be piling up the dead bodies of children.
On July 19th, the Bisho High Court ruled in favor of equal education and Section 27. The ruling declared certain clauses in the norms and standards unconstitutional and affirmed that the right to education infrastructure is immediately realizable.
What the judgment in the Bisho High Court means is that you've got a much stronger regulatory framework that schools and learners and communities can use to say that the state actually has to fix schools.
The judge issued a strongly worded ruling demanding accountability from the Department of Basic Education. I cannot fathom a reason why, given the nature of the right in question and the abundant crisis, the respondent cannot develop a plan and allocate resources in accordance with her obligations. Each day, the parents of these children send them to schools as they are compelled to. They expose children to danger which could lead to certain death. The proviso provides the respondent with a lifetime indemnity against discharging the duty she owes in terms of Section 29(1)(a).
We are happy that there will be a legal word on this matter, compelling the department to do something. Of course, it helps us to accelerate our processes, which were already underway. So to us, it's not a big deal that we are in court in that sense. Broadly, we agree with them because we all have the same interests. It's about improving the environment in which learning and teaching takes place.
On August 10th, the Department of Basic Education appealed the Bisho High Court ruling.
This is a truly wonderful morning, and I want to start off by extending my gratitude to Minister Angie Motshekga, who responded so quickly and so positively.
Following the death of Lumka Mketwa, President Ramaphosa gave the Minister of the Department of Basic Education, Angie Motshekga, until mid-June to create and unveil a plan to fix sanitation in schools. The initial June deadline passed without any public statement, but on August 14th, only 4 days after the department appealed the norms and standards ruling, the president announced SAFE, the Sanitation Appropriate for Education plan.
When we talk about going to the toilet, we take it for granted. But across the length and the breadth of our country, there are many who face enormous challenges, and as we have heard, even death when they have to go to a toilet.
The quality of the sanitation audit that collected data for SAFE has been questioned.
I've visited more than 40 schools now. They have never received any call from the department regarding the sanitation audit. So you ask yourself, where does that plan come from?
SAFE aims to fix sanitation nationwide and to ultimately eradicate all pit latrines by 2030. Despite the promising plan, doubt remains about the government's ability to implement this lofty goal.
Then now we are on our fourth plan, where we hope that sanitation or dangerous facilities will be eradicated. And so I think we went from having hope and being optimistic to being cautiously optimistic to now being, I think it will be a miracle if it really truly happens.
What we have to avoid is that we get some gestures, some theatre, some openings of key toilets without addressing the systemic fundamental problems across all 9 provinces. And those systemic problems are to do with capacity and building communities' understanding of processes so that they can hold government accountable.
So this SAFE initiative could be a catalyst for a new revolution in sanitation in our country.
There still has to be physical infrastructure built in many of these schools. That you're just talking about classrooms. You still haven't covered, having laboratories, having libraries, having, any type of recreational activity infrastructure in schools. That's still something that's very far from completion.
This is an initiative that will save lives, but it will also restore dignity to tens of thousands of our nation's children, as our Constitution demands.
To tell you the honest fact, I really don't have hope with that, because they are the one who should have discovered all these things. But they didn't come to, they don't visit school and check the infrastructure, the conditions of the toilets. So I'm the one who went to them. I'm the one who is reporting to them the condition of the toilets, the condition of the building. But it seems as if they don't care.
For the sake of our children, for the sake of the memory of Lumka Mkethwa, and for the sake of all the young children who died in our schools, and for the sake of the future of our country, we must do this. I thank you for your participation this morning.
I'm very aware of how poverty and inequality in South Africa have not been reduced over the last 25 years. But if there is any way in which we can reduce inequality, if there's any way in which we can build inclusion and participation, it is through education more than any other sector.
We can't live on hope alone. There needs to be action that's put behind that hope. At the moment, there seems to be quite a resistance towards putting action towards, addressing these issues. But it definitely is going to be a long and arduous process. We're under no illusions about that.
Maybe it's about firstly informing people of the kind of schools that do exist in this country. Everyone is always horrified by it. How can this be? Learners are dying in pit toilets. Pit toilets shouldn't exist according to the law, but they do, and we're losing learners.
Na se segolo se ke se lebeletseng ke bone gore education a se bele taba le ka ngwanola le mathomo ene a bile a senke e bele le tlhokomelo kudu mo baneng ba rena ka baka la ro a ona di-toilet mo dikolong tse dintsi mo dikolong tse tsa mo dinageng magaeng a ona di-toilet di-sanitation a one di-toilet ande ke dingwe di tlhoka le metsi gore o boima mo dinageng magaeng ene di-library, no libraries, no school libraries, lunch, bottle stores. It's not good. I see into a lebeletseng gore bana ba rena ba senyega ka mokgwa.
In structural systemic terms, it is the most powerful way in which you can create conditions not only for individuals to flourish and to be those shining examples, but for the majority of people, learners, to gain the skills and expertise to participate as citizens, as members of the community in the building of our country.
But if you break the cycle, if you break the chain somewhere, then the kind of people you're producing at the end of the education system are completely different. But if we're stifling the kind of knowledge and the quality of the knowledge that they are accessing and being taught, then we are essentially altering how someone's life could work out in the end.
Education is one of the most important weapons in a country. And the extent to which black education is neglected is something very difficult to put in words. We wanted to transform education into a national asset, into an instrument we can use for development.
Yes.